Blog Talk Radio.
You are with Ronnie McLean on Dark Matter Radio, on Blog Talk Radio, and we're also going to be doing it on YouTube as well with I.N.N.A Live. And we do thank you. We also thank the more than 500 now people that we have to our YouTube channel, and it is wonderful, great, and it's also been fascinating that we're able to get so many people. We didn't really think about membership or subscriptions or anything else like that, but we will be starting to push that here recently now because of all of the things that they got going with YouTube in terms of you cannot do live shows unless you have 1,000 subscriptions. That is just ridiculous. But again, like we said before, they're changing everything, and everything is moving around and becoming different. So this is one of the reasons why we are pushing to do all different types of formats, and we're pushing to do all different types of outlets, including other outlets on other premium stuff. So Facebook, YouTube won't be the only thing that we're doing. We're also using Periscope. We're using a few other different ones to be able to get the word out. And we'll also be doing a lot of live radio shows from the radio program itself. So yeah, it's been very interesting, as we've been on now for, 2 years, 2.5 years now, and we've covered a lot of ground. So we're now in this situation where we're going to be discussing 666 and the carbon-12 to carbon-7 connection. So this is going to be part one of a real show that we're going to be start getting into this revolutionary change that's taking place around our planet right now. And in this part of the solar system, we're going to get into what carbon-12 is. We're going to get into the connection of 666 and the revelation, what it is in the Bible. We're going to get into what carbon actually is and how it's based in melanin, and what is melanin, right? Because melanin is not on the evolutionary chart, so it's not it's not on the periodical chart, so it's not an element. And we're going to get into that as well. And then, what is the difference between carbon-14, carbon-13, carbon-12, carbon-7, and all those different types of magic numbers? And is carbon-7 actually a stable element? Well, the answer is no, but we'll get into that as well. So very, very, very fascinating type things as we can start looking at. So let's get a little bit of a breakdown about the secret science of melanin and the transformation. So, one of the things we know is that scientists revealed that the secrets of all secrets, this is the secret of all secrets because, as you know, the breakdown of carbon-12 as the most abundant element in the universe. Everyone on Earth has carbon-12 within them, some sort of a symbolization of carbon-12 within them. If you are a carbon being or quote-unquote black person, etc., you have a selenium-based carbon. If you are of Caucasians, the whites, Europeans, Chinese, Arabs, Indian, from Native Americans, and even some Africans. It doesn't matter how dark you are, but a lot of those people have a sulfur-based melanin in them. And they are quite different. Also, the melanin and the lighter being type people are a folded type of melanin, whereas in the darker type beings, their melanin is more spread out all over the place. And very interesting and very, very interesting as we begin to start getting into this transformation and how these particles from somewhere are actually changing a lot of the things. So the sciences did reveal one of the major secrets of secrets, that the breakdown of carbon-12 is the most abundant element in the universe. And it's one of the 5 DNA elements also illustrated on how carbon-12 is being affected purely by the sun to transmute to carbon-7. Now, they say the sun. We'll get into that. They say the sun, but I'm going to say it's a universal type particle that's coming from all different parts of the universe because of where we're at in our universal solar system. So, in addition, carbon-7 has a composite of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 1 neuron, while carbon-12 has 6 of each element, 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neurons. So, and again, when you begin to start getting into this, you start thinking about the Bible, about 666, the number of the man, the mark of the beast, and all those other kinds of things. And how does that relate to everything that we're talking about now? Well, you know, when the Bible warns us of the 666, 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neurons, which is the number of man, we begin to start understanding that carbon-7 is the hierarchy or the undiscovered isotope of carbon, which has 6 electrons, 6 protons, and only 1 neuron, right? Now, that's important because that's going to be fitting in a certain type of system that we're going to be looking at. It is a material equivalent of the Kundalini system, as well as the Metron's cube, right? So we're going to stick with the Kundalini system. So what's happening in this transfiguration is that the body is breaking down from its carbon-12 to a carbon-7 being, and that carbon-7 being is able to fit very nicely into the natural system of the Kundalini system, of the energy system of your biological body, bringing you into a lighter type being in all of its form. You know, like iron has the ability to sustain magnetic fields around it, carbon-7 has an uncanny ability to carry hyperdimensional fields. And that's very important because the way that you're, you know, the more selenium that you have in your system, the more that you are a transmitter and a receiver, and it goes into that. And when you begin to start breaking down what's happening with the particles that are coming from the sun is transmuting a lot of energy, and also it is also transmitting a lot of signals that has vibrational codes within inside of them that is feeding to the physical, soulful body and giving it a reprogramming, so to speak, a reprogramming that's happening to the whole entire biological system. And again, it doesn't matter, you know, whether you're selenium-based, carbon-based, sulfur-based, doesn't matter, light skin, black, every single thing on the planet, that's what's happening. So this is extremely important when you start talking about hyperdimensional fields, because a lot of us are able to do that now, even in the carbon-12, right? But it's going to become a lot more prevalent. So such fields of this, it can amplify and other hyperdimensional fields, just as iron and copper in the transformer can amplify magnetic fields. So when you're talking about, especially selenium-based beings, they have a lot more copper inside of their system, their brains, their heads, than most other people. And of course, we all have iron, which is all throughout our blood, but this makes you a transmitter. It also makes you a receiver, and it also makes you very, very, very very able to receive new programming that is being dealt out from the universal energy in itself. So naturally, it is formed in the brain and spiritual adepts when they have out-of-body experiences to perform other supernatural phenomena such as bellowation, materialization, etc. During such time, the glow or halo that is formed around the heads of these lightly evolved beings is actually due to the excess neurons produced when carbon-12 transmutes to carbon-7. I have to really apologize for all the noise that's going on in the background, but we're this around everybody, everything is pretty good, everything is great. So it is very important for you to understand what I just got finished saying when it comes down to this carbon-7 transformation, the carbon-12 to the carbon-7 transformation. I want to naturally, it is formed in the brain. So your brain, which has selenium, it has carbon, it has iron, it has copper, and the outlines of the brain, it is a perfect receptor and receiver of things. So this is what you are naturally, but it's getting much, much, much more stronger, right? So, and that's why they call it the spiritual depths, right, of the brain, right? And it hits the pineal gland actually is actually being affected by this as well. We're going to get a show dealing with the pineal gland because it's a pretty wonderful thing when you have an understanding what's really going on with your body and why you need to really pay attention to all the things that are happening with this transformation of this carbon-7 being, carbon-12 being to carbon-7 being. So during this time, so now when we talk about this glow, right? In all these old pictures, and even in a lot of cave paintings on in the Mayans, the Incas, a lot of these drawings that they have, old drawings, they have these halo type things around the brain, and again, that is representative of that transformation, that halo, that the way that you're able to receive these kinds of messages going into the brain. So the carbon-12 transmutes to carbon-7 inside the brains, right? And however this carbon-7 quickly decays to a stable type form of matter. Hence, it's almost impossible to detect carbon-7 directly in the human body. So how it's going to function. So right now you have 6 neurons on one side of your body, 6 protons on one side of your body, and you have 6 electrons on one side of your body. So in the Kundalini system, in your crown chakra, that is a symbolization of the neurons up there, right? So the neurons, what happens is that it's breaking down the neurons, the carbon of the neurons. The carbon up there is giving off 5 of the neurons. They're losing 5 of the neurons, and when that happens, it goes down to 1, and that's how you get 6, 6, and 1, which you become a carbon-7 being. And so, what I really, really want to do in this section, and I want to get into how this is, and we'll get into the history and the religion as offered as many dues as the identity and of this most wondrous material through Coptic notation, symbols, and genetic texts. It has to veil in the most puzzling languages and symbols, since the knowledge in the wrong hands could mean destruction of this planet and such power. So everybody's going through this transmutation. Everybody is, and everybody is going to be affected by it, right? And, how do we know that this is actually really happening? Well, one of the things that we have to really understand is that the sun is changing the rate of radioactive decay and breaking the rules of the chemistry, right? So it's important for us to understand what's happening in our sphere of influence, what we're actually doing in our world, what's happening in our solar system, in our space. So the sun is changing. the supposedly constant rate of decay in radioactive elements. And we have absolutely no idea why. That's what the scientists are saying. But an entirely unknown particle could be behind it. Plus, this discovery could help us predict deadly solar flares. So now, deadly solar flares are, for one, people who aren't able to really take the really energetic stuff in terms of of what is actually coming out of the sun and what's actually happening in our sphere of influence in our solar system and in our universe as a whole. Right? So it's one of the most basic concepts in all of chemistry. Radioactive elements decay at a constant rate, especially carbon, right? And that's why they use carbon-14, carbon-13 dating, right? If that weren't the case, carbon-14 dating wouldn't tell us anything reliable about the age of archaeological materials, discoveries, and even chemotherapy treatment would be a gamble. It's such a fundamental, scientists don't even bother testing it anymore, right? So you got to remember how stable this stuff actually is. That's how stable it is. And that's pretty important, right? That's why researchers had to stumble upon this discovery in the most unlikely ways. So a team of Purdue University needed to generate a string of random numbers, and surprisingly tricky task that is complicated by the fact that whatever method you use to generate the numbers will have some influences on them, right? So physics professor Ephraim Fibonacci, that's a hard one to pronounce, but that professor decided to use the decay of radioactive isotopes as a source of randomness. Although the overall decay is known, constant, the individual atoms would decay at an unpredictable way, providing random patterns. That's when they discovered something was strange, very strange. The date produced gave random numbers, individual atoms, yes, but the overall decay wasn't constant, was not constant. Flying in the face of this, the accepted rules of chemistry intrigued the professors, the students, and all that were there. They checked out the long-range observations of the silicon-32 and radium-226 decay, both of which showed a slight but different variation over time. Interesting, and the decay seemed to vary with seasons, with the rate a little faster in winter than it did in the summer. So they thought that this was one of the things that was happening, that it was nothing more than, the weather affecting the decay, right? Which is kind of weird to even think that in the first place. First, researchers tried to rationalize this, right? Seasonal fluctuations as a result of instrument error, perhaps caused by changing heat humidity factors. But the idea fell apart very quickly when the new engineers, Gerald Jenkins, and also noted that the decay rate of the sort live isotope manganese 54 dropped slightly during the solar flare. Interesting. In fact, the decay on this decrease began a good 36 hours before the flare even occurred, which is also very, very interesting. This suggests two things. One, that theoretically puzzling, and the other that's hugely exciting from a particle perspective. If the decay rates really are affected by solar flares before the flares even occur, that could provide the first Hey, sorry about that, but as usual, Blog Talk Radio has all kinds of problems with their connection, so I lost you there for about maybe a minute or so. So, sorry about that. So we want to pick up on what we were talking about in terms of the 666, the carbon 12, carbon 7 connection piece, with about maybe 5 or 6 minutes left to the show. And again, you're on Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean, talking about this wonderful, fascinating subject of this transfiguration from carbon 12 to carbon 7. So let's get back into it. The particle-based, so we were talking about how they were trying to figure out what was actually causing these sun flares, what was actually causing the stuff that was going on and causing the radioisotopes of carbon not to decay when they're supposed to be decaying, right? So the exciting news, right, if decay rates were really affected by the solar flares before the flares occurred, they were, saying that, they could probably develop this into a solar flare warning system, considering several solar flares can wreak havoc on the electrical grids and kill astronauts and who aren't probably protected. That would be a huge benefit to humanity, right? Huge benefit, that they were saying. But the particle pulse aside, why was this happening? The seasonal fluctuations suggested that the sun could be involved somehow, and the solar flare connection confirmed it. The scientists speculated that the solar neutrinos, the nearly massless particle created by products of the sun's fusion of hydrogen atoms into helium, might be the cause of the variations. The fact that these neutrinos pass straight through the Earth and everything else with ease fit well into the fact that the decay rates were changing even at night, when the entire planet was between the radioactive isotopes and the sun. Once the researchers conclusively ruled out environmental factors, that left the sun as the only possible, and I'm going to say it wasn't the only possible, that they're saying it's the only possible cause of the decay variations. They also found that the amount of change varied in time with the Earth's orbit, and the effect was greater when the orbit closer to the sun and thus into contact with more neutrinos. That's where the renowned Stanford physicist Professor Peter Struckrock entered the picture. Confronted with this mystery, he advised the researchers to test how the decay fluctuations correlated with the sun's own rotation. They found something extremely interesting. And they found is that the decay rates recurred every 33 days. Isn't that interesting? Every 33 days. Sun must be amazing. Which didn't quite fit the sun's known surface rotation length of 28 days. But the neutrinos wouldn't be coming from the surface. They would be coming from deep inside the core of the sun. Unlikely as it might seem, the sun's core must be rotating a bit slower than its surface, apparently once every 33 Masonic days. I have to put that one in there because it's very interesting, because that 33 always comes up somewhere. Always coming up somewhere. So although this relies on some unlikely assumptions, an occasional Behold Initiative leap, the model they produce seems to hang together, and yet the mystery remains. However, the neutrino interact with the radioactive particles in this way. It doesn't fit with the known behavior of neutrinos, and it opens up a very, very real possibility that some previous unknown subatomic particle is actually behind the bizarre effect. As Peter Struck explains, and its effect that no one yet understands. Theorists are starting to say what's going on, but that's what the evidence points to. It's challenge for the physicists and a challenge for the solar people too. If it's not neutrinos, it would have to be something we don't know about, an unknown particle that is also emitted by the sun and has effect, and that would be even more remarkable. If this new discovery holds up, which it does, right? We've then discovered that the sun changes rates of radioactive decay, and we can predict solar flares before they happen. The sun core rotates, however, than the surface, or it rotates slower than the surface, and maybe even that entirely unknown particle exists and affecting our world in tangible ways. Not a bad set of results for what was supposed to be simple research for some random numbers. And that is really, really interesting, because when you get a situation as what we're having here, and I don't believe it's neutrinos. I believe it is an unknown particle that they don't know of, or they do know of, some scientists know of, but may not be saying anything right now because they don't want to really let it out, because the changes that are happening around us is affecting each and every one of us tremendously, right? It's even affecting time, because as things break down quicker, time speeds up, right? The time is speeding up. So this is one of the things we're going to be getting into too, how this is actually really making the time speed up all over the place. And it's it's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting, and how this happens. So this is part one of probably a part 5 series, 666, and the carbon-12 to carbon-7 connection. So I don't know if it's going to be, 6 series or what, but we'll keep going on. So tonight here on Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean, the sun is changing, and the atmosphere that is around us is changing. And this is how, this is what's going on in our world. And we need to be, recognize this in ourselves and everything that we're doing, because we must be able to make this transition and be able to make it pure. So this is the reason why there's a lot more things that are going on. People who think that they're mentally ill aren't really mentally ill. They're actually being affected by universal energy that is peeling away a lot of things, and people are becoming like a raw nerve. And there's a lot of different ways that you have to be able to start dealing with these things. So this is Ronnie McLean for Dark Matter Radio, and I thank you for being here today. You guys have a great night.
There's been an awakening. You're listening to Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie.
Ronnie McLean for Dark Matter Radio. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe.